Comeback hit record for Paul Simon, right smack dab in the middle of the 80s. You Can Call Me Al at number 36 by Paul Simon from Graceland, replenishing his creative juices going to South Africa. He really just went out. He went out of the box. Thought out of the box. Worked with South African musicians, experimenting with their sounds. One band that Paul Simon got into, South African band, Stamila, their guitarist. Stamila's guitarist, his name Ray Phiri, or Pyrie, Phiri. He came up with the riff of this record in a jam session. All these tapes, the tapes that were generated, went right back up to New York City. I mean, we got rows and rows of tape that Paul Simon's longtime producer, Roy Hagee, had to go through. He had to sort it all out. Now, keep in mind, this is the ancient days compared to today's technology. This is the pre-PC days, pre-YouTube days, the pre-digital days. This is analog recording. And Roy Hagee had to go through all these tapes and just sort everything out, making all the splices. It was hard work. Simon and Garfunkel. I always go back to the days of Simon and Garfunkel. They combined these literary, sometimes these self-confessional lyrics, so imaginatively conceived, with a rock and roll beat. One of the reasons why the 60s was such a great decade. Sounds of Silence in late 1965, or at least a remix version of Sounds of Silence in 65, going to number one. Excuse me. 1966 was a huge year for Simon and Garfunkel. They kicked off the year with Sounds of Silence. Homeward Bound came right on the heels of that. I Am a Rock in the spring of 66. And then there was the literary Dangling Conversation in the summer of 1966. I get goosebumps when I listen to that record big time. And there was the Hazy Shade of Winter. They were coming out with one right after another. 1967, Scarborough Affair, At the Zoo, and Faking It in the summer of 1967. And then you get into, from The Graduate, Mrs. Robertson, everybody remembers that, Bridge Over Troubled Water, Cecilia, El Condor Pasa, and Does Anybody Remember America? That was such a powerful record. Late 70, early 71, didn't make top 40. Found out something else interesting about this record, You Can Call Me Al, where Al and Betty, mentioned in the song, came from. 1970. Paul Simon and his wife Peggy Harper, they threw a party. A composer named Stanley Silverman brought another composer, a French composer, his name Pierre Boulez. And they partied, had a good time. I'm sure they had some scintillating conversations as well about art, about music. When Pierre Boulez left, he turned to Paul Simon and he says, "Bye, Al, I'll see you later." And he says to his wife Peggy, "Bye, Betty, I'll see you later," something like that. Because Pierre Boulez, being French, when he heard Paul, he heard Al. When he heard Peggy, he heard Peggy, he interpreted it as Betty. So this is brilliant. This song was there was kind of an inside joke in this record. You Can Call Me Al. Call Me Al, Paul Simon. At number 36 on my fantasy playlist of September 6th, 1986.